CLS Talks.
Talk to me.
CLS Talks.
Talk to me.
CLS Talks.
Talk to me.
CLS
Talk to
Talks.
me.
Real information.
Talk to me.
Real education.
Talk to me. Talk to me. They don't talk to me. They look like that morning. They don't talk to me. They back that morning. They don't talk to me. They back that morning. They don't talk to me. They back that morning. They don't talk to me. They back.
You're very welcome to another CLS Talks, coming live from the Great Wall of China. And why the Great Wall of China? Well, I'll let Des Carty explain, because he's here with me. Des, you're very welcome. What a setting, eh?
Well, welcome to the Great Wall of China, and you can hear the wind in the background here. We're up high, quite high.
Yeah.
And there's obviously loads and loads of myths and legends surrounding the Great Wall of China, but we thought it was appropriate to do it in this setting because we're going to be talking about the Chinese art of war by Sun Tzu over the next few sessions.
Indeed. Now, I've been looking around me for the last while to see if there was any sign of Sun Tzu or his ancestors or even his grave. And one thing to note about Sun Tzu, before people start attacking us by email and saying, well, he never really existed, it's not, a little bit like Homer, it's not widely acknowledged that he did exist or that he didn't. There, as you said, a lot of mystery around the Great Wall, a lot of mystery around Sun Tzu as well. Some people have speculated that maybe the art of war was a la Shakespeare, just if you want to go and research that side of things.
That one now, but
that it may be a number of different authors, writers. So we're not going to focus on who wrote this thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of for the purposes of what we're talking about. He was a general going back 1500 years odd, who was exceptionally good at what he did. Allegedly.
Yep.
And he wrote a kind of set of rules or treatise, whatever one you call it, about how to enter into war and succeed at the art of war. He turned it into an art form.
yeah, as he suggested, it's a matter of capturing the enemy whole, which doesn't mean that you destroy the enemy. You just put them into a position where they either concede or they give up, give over, and you do not have to destroy them. This is one thing I'd be keen to advocate here, that we're not out for destruction, and that's not what the art of war is about. It's about capturing, as he called it, whole. Capturing whole. Capturing the whole.
And for those who may not have read The Art of War, I would strongly suggest that you do so. It's not a very long book. It can be found so easily and readily available. You can get a PDF online for free. It's one of the easiest books you'll ever find. And it's also, while it's not the easiest read, it's not a difficult read either, and it's not particularly long, so it's well worth going through, even dipping in and out of.
Well, just to add, Lionel, we also have uploaded a copy of Sun Tzu's Art of War, a copy we found or sent to us.
Well, you're way ahead of me then.
It's uploaded on the website. And the new website we'll be putting out there in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, is the CLS.1. So it's a reinvention of ourselves in terms of the CLS. So the Art of War is on there. It's freely available to download, along with 20, 30, 40 other books as well. If people want to go there and download that.
No excuse then.
No excuse, absolutely. So, what do we want to do with this then?
Well, just to add to what you were saying about essentially capturing the enemy and not necessarily destroying, it's not about wanton destruction. One of the beauties of the Art of War for me, and how it correlates to what we do in a legal sense, and the work that we do, or the entertainment that we provide, is that it examines both defence and attack. One of the important strategies that's employed throughout the Art of War is knowing when to attack, when to defend, what tools to use, what your armoury is, and planning is a huge thing as well. Yeah. So I mean, these will all feed into what we're talking about in a legal context as well, and it's worth framing it for people at the outset that while we may be talking about military, it completely correlates, and we will correlate it with the legal side of things.
As best we can.
Of course, yeah.
That's a caveat I think we need to throw in, because we're providing a context in the legal framework and lawful framework for people, and it's our interpretation of what Sun Tzu has said in The Art of War. So we're kind of translating it once again into the context of the legal and lawful battles and war that may be ensuing.
Indeed. And as a wise man once said, a wise man hailing from the island of Inishnaviwa, who some listeners may know, every cripple has his own way of walking. So that applies to this as well.
That truly was a wise man. Yes.
A wise man.
Lovely. Okay, so again, we were, for the listeners' benefit, we were speaking earlier obviously about the art of war and what we're going to be putting out there. So by way of an introduction, I might suggest, Lionel, that we put in the analogy of, in Sun Tzu's Art of War, he talks about what's called the sovereign. And then the sovereign devolves his information, his strategy, his orders down to a general to implement, and then the general devolves it down then to the soldier. So you've a three-tier implementation of the strategy and the eventual battlefront to where the soldier is standing.
Yeah.
But also aligned with that, what the sovereign will have. So the sovereign being you or me, we are our own state. We are the rulers of our own state. So we are calling ourselves the sovereign. And over here on the other side, you have the state per se, which might be the state itself. It could be the Department of Public Prosecutions. It could be the judges. It could be the barristers. It could be the banks. It could be the Garda Síochána. So that's the state over there. But we are our own sovereign state. So we are the sovereign in this case. So we have generals. Then we have soldiers, the foot soldiers who go into battle eventually. But alongside with that, we'll also have our own council over to another side that we'll consult with. So people might make the analogy, well, that's sort of like your legal or lawful council. But we'd have our own separate council that we would take information from or consult with in order to put together our strategies for going into battle.
And for those that might be listening and not quite grasping that concept, and they're thinking, well, I'm out on my own in this battle or in this war, we will be going through and explaining just how you can be the sum of those parts yourself, even if it's just you taking on the role of the general or the soldier or the sovereign or whatever it is. So we'll be breaking it down. So don't get too intimidated by the fact that you think you might need 20 people all around you. That's not necessarily the case. It may be the case if that's what you want to have, but not necessarily. So it does apply to you even if you've just written your first letter and it's just you out there by yourself at the moment.
Yeah. And again, we'll keep reiterating this as we go through, but we have the sovereign who has his legal counsel or his counsel, his or her counsel. Then he devolves the instructions down to the general. Then the general devolves the instructions down to the soldier. But prior to all this devolution of responsibility and actions, the sovereign will have what's called his spies, his or her spies that go out there. The spies are, again, you're devolving yourself down into being a spy. What you're doing is you're going out and you're researching and you're gaining knowledge of the enemy and the enemy's processes and strategies, which are not that difficult to get hold of. Now, understanding them may be a different thing, but certainly it's not hard to send out your spies, albeit friends of yours or yourself, to find out the knowledge and information that you need to go to battle.
Yeah.
So again, I'll reiterate this, and again we'll go through it again and again and again, reminding people of where it's structured. So we have the sovereign on top with the state controlling the state, their own state. The general below, the soldier below that. Now, in between that, you'll have the spies that you'll send out to either give information out or take information back. And then to one side, then you have your own council. The council counsel the sovereign, and the sovereign then decides whether or not he wants to take on board what the council have said or not. The responsibility devolves back to the sovereign, which is you or me.
And all responsibility devolves back to the sovereign as well. So the sovereign is responsible for the behaviour of the soldiers, for the behaviour of the generals ultimately. So a bit of critical thought might be needed. So for example, if your soldiers aren't performing the way that you as a sovereign want them to perform, you need to critically analyse why are they doing what they're doing wrong, and how does that reflect on the generals and then ultimately on you, the sovereign, also. So there's huge personal responsibility, which we speak about a lot on the CLS Talks anyway. That is no less applied when it comes to the art of war.
Now again, by way of a broader introduction, the spies also help you understand how the generals and the soldiers are performing in the field, so to speak, be it in the court or be it in terms of engaging with banks or judges, whatever it might be. So the spy will come back and give you what we could call for the moment transcripts of what happened within the proceedings or the battles, we call them. So the spies are very, very, very important. Right from the outset, you need to set yourself up as having even calling them spies probably isn't that fair a word or term for them, but certainly they are people or parties, we call them, that go out and gain the knowledge that you need to implement your strategies on an ongoing, continuous basis. Or they put out information that would be beneficial to you and detrimental to the enemy you perceive.
Yeah. And if you can view it in terms of a battlefield, I know personally that's something that I often do. So I'll imagine almost like a board game, and you have the enemy on one side and you have your own sovereignty on the other, and there's an area in the middle where you may meet and do battle. That could be the courtroom. When, for example, I'm writing a letter, I see that as my spy heading into enemy territory. The letter ends up on the desk of the opposition, and I just find that when I kind of picture it myself, a lot of people are quite visual, some people aren't, but for those that are visual, it can be a very useful tool if you actually map out your own battleground and see it then in those terms when you're dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with on your desk.
Now, is there anything else we need to sort of give people by way of an introduction?
No, I think that's a very concise. I don't think we need to get too flowery with the introduction. That's essentially what we're doing. So we'll be correlating the book The Art of War, which we strongly recommend everybody reads. It doesn't really matter how much you think you understand on first reading, but it is a companion piece to what we'll be talking about.
Well, that's something, you reminded me there, Lionel. I mean, I'm not too clear on how long or how far ago, how far back I read the Art of War when I first read it. Probably 15, 20 years. I'm not 100% clear about that. But I certainly, when I read it first, I didn't get it. I just read it for the sake of saying to other people, I've read it, yeah, whatever. But I didn't understand it, didn't get it. But for some reason, bits of it stuck somewhere in my head. So then when I went back again another time and read it, a little bit more stuck in my head. Eventually I read it again and again and again and so on and so forth. And what you find is you evolve, your thinking evolves to the point where you're actually implementing the art of war, but you're not conscious of it. It almost becomes an unconscious habit of looking at things in such a strategic manner from the perspective of the art of war. So it's just habitual. You're actually conditioning yourself to think a certain way in relation to anything that might come at you in terms of a battle or a legal fight. So it's just conditioning. Now, it's an awful term to use in some contexts, but I think it's a form of conditioning or training.
Yeah, getting yourself in condition, you know,
absolutely,
in a positive sense.
And that's what conditioning is. You're training yourself to be able to deal with the battles ahead.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, and I mean, just when we were on the bus coming to the Great War, we were discussing this off air and how
can I forget?
Such scenery.
The bus ride.
We were discussing how, and there will be many listeners out there who have dealt with cases, as you go through the art of war, even on first listen in a lot of cases, I certainly had this experience, you will start to automatically associate certain chapters and certain strategies with those you have implemented yourself in the past, and you might think, oh well, that was just common sense. Well, quite often the best strategies are just common sense, and our conditioning through society or whatever else it has actually diverted us from the path of common sense. So there is a huge amount of clarity of thinking that comes with this as well, I've found, the more and more that I read it. So hopefully we can transfer some of that onto the listener over the coming episodes.
Well, my closing gesture on this for the introduction is that very often, and it'll tell you this and it shows you this in the book anyway, The Art of War, that sometimes sitting back and doing nothing is actually the right thing to do as well.
And quite often people are loath to do that. If you say to somebody, sit on your hands now for a while and see what happens, gather intelligence, just observe. A lot of people want to be in control of things and they want that perceived power, but sometimes the best form of control is to actually sit back and let other people make mistakes.
And just observe,
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I'm going off to do a bit more sightseeing, and we will be back, of course, next week.
Will we ever get back?
Well, maybe not, but at least we know we can do it remotely here from the Great Wall.
We can send on the recording, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly, and we'll talk to you, of course, on next week's episode. Thanks for joining me here in China, Des.
Thanks very much, Lionel, and thanks, folks, for listening.
CLS Talks.